Doing well, doing well.
Hi, Faith.
And I did forget to mention we have moved to open panel, so this is the open panel portion of the debate. So Kurt and Tavo are immune to mutes and kicks. Nobody else is though. So you can mute, kick, whatever you want to do there.
I don't
Ask
mind. I don't mind
questions.
being not. I don't mind being non-immune to like mutes because
No, you.
I want
This
people
is
to.
this is the rules, Tavo.
Okay,
I'm
because I want people
telling
to
them the
support your
rules.
channel. I
I'm
will
tell-
make. I will make irritating noises so
No,
that
no,
I
no,
get
no, no,
muted.
no, 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 no. I'm
so that
telling them the
people will support
rules.
your
The only
channel.
way you break immunity is by using a slur.
Or coughing up an owl pellet on
you-
stream.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anything that
under
gets me in trouble with YouTube breaks your it's not even gets me in trouble because I just have to go in there and delete it. But anything that I have to go and spend extra time after the debate on breaks mute immunity. So just that's how you
Yeah.
break your mute immunity. But don't
So
do
guys,
it,
my
please.
apologies.
Yeah, that's a rule.
I'm going to be back on the stream, but I do have to bug out for just a brief bit.
No, I get it. You got your kid. Do your thing. Do your thing.
I'll be right back. Okay.
Yep.
Oh, that gives good. That gives me an opportunity to ask Tavo a question about something.
Sure, and I wanted to say hi, Robin, and I also wanted to say hi, Faith from Facts. Good to see both of you. Faith from Facts is frequently on my stream, which so nice to see you here. And actually, Taco's been on my stream bunch as well as Dr. Kurt. So, yeah, but go ahead, Robin.
I had a question about.
I haven't been on his stream, but I've watched like 7 or 8 of his streams. Right, he's got a fun panel that he runs. I like open panels. This is what I enjoy. I enjoy listening to open conversations. That's why I'm in the Discord, and that's why I run this. These types of conversations are fun to me. Even if people have no idea what they're talking about, they still have a way that they're looking at the world that's different from you, and they're sharing your experience. Even if it makes you angry and frustrated and yell and whatever else it does, it still is providing you information that you didn't know prior and a different way of looking at the world prior, even if it's stupid as shit. That's what I got to say to that. So I love the open panels, Not saying yours is stupid. I'm just saying like in general, right?
Yeah,
it's like an in general, all-encompassing statement, right?
Yeah, but I believe Tacos. I believe I'm quoting this correctly, and I'll get to your question in just a second, Robin. But I believe that you said that you were a believer, Tacos, until you came to my open stream, which made you an atheist. So at the very least,
Oh my
That was
god!
a
very
joke. Oh my god! So I was trolling the shit out of your audience there. Just so you know, I was messing.
Oh my
God, I was messing around there. So that was me messing around with Kurt. So obviously I've known Kurt a while now, and so we were going around in your stream. Oh my god, yes. So Kurt presented the reverse modal ontological argument to somebody in there, and I pretended like it deconverted me in his chat, and I thought that was funny. I'm sorry.
Oh my god!
I thought it was funny, so I was just messing around with Kurt in chat.
And here, Tavo been worried about your eternal soul.
No, I've been an atheist a very long time. That was just me screwing around in chat with Kurt. I'm kind of a troll sometimes.
No,
kind of. Yes.
No, what's up, Robin? What did you? I'm happy to answer you. Yeah, I'm glad. It's nice to see you as well.
Okay, because yes, you too. Now I can't remember the letters of your argument that you presented on Daniel's stream the other day. CTF. Okay, I had the only thing that I caught out of it that I had maybe a little issue with was I keep hearing myself.
You're echoing through Faith and Fact's microphone. It appears. Actually, we all are. Oh, and Kurt's back. It looks like. Let me get Kurt pulled up.
Okay. The part where you said the atheist, like from an atheist perspective, we shouldn't expect to see this. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, sure.
I had issue with that because I think, I don't know what the atheist part would be, but I think that Christianity is one of the probably most popular religion that has ever been. There's probably more people who have practiced Christianity than any religion ever, most of the other ones put together. And I think that makes a lot of people who would be interested in preserving the evidence or creating evidence or anything. So I would think that as with it being as large a religion as it is, and as many followers as it was, and as fast as it took off across the world after a while, that we should, I mean, we should expect actually to see more evidence than we do. I think, like, I think that we should have a lot better. There should be more writings and or something from people closer to the time. But so I don't see that as like being anything that stands out. Is what I was going to say.
No, I mean, that's an astute observation, but let me hone in on what I was saying a little more clearly. So I looked at 17 different religions. Mostly I focused on 13 of those religions, which constitute the major religions of the world. And then I looked across 13 evaluative criteria. Now, for 12 of the religions, there was good performance in some criteria and poor performance in other criteria, right? So Christianity is the outlier in that regard in that it performed well across all 13 evaluative criteria. So that makes Christianity at least an outlier compared to the other 12 religions. I don't think that means that Christianity is necessarily divine, but I think that means that it has stronger historical evidence. And I think an atheist then has to explain why other religions didn't had very different patterns. Almost every religion, in fact, every religion performed well in some categories and poorly in other categories. Now, the other thing that I want to address is, does this all just shake out to an argument ad populum? In other words, can we distill all of these arguments down to an argument ad populum? I think maybe a little bit, some of them can be distilled down, but most of the good performance on the CTF argument doesn't track with ad populum arguments. I'll just give you one example. Like, Islam is this. I think it's still the second most populous religion in the world, and it actually
Yes.
doesn't do it. It's one of the worst performers on the CTF argument, depending on which version of the criteria that you use. But it's certainly in the bottom tier across most of the criteria. So I do seem to be empirically tracking something other than argument popularity. Now, what I did is I tried to reproduce the CTF argumentation in the non-Anglophone literature, and specifically, I looked at an Arabic language research database to try and get analogs of the CTF argument that would work well. By the way, the some people are asking more questions about this. So CTF stands for Comparative Theological Framework, and there are 13 different criteria that I look at. Some of the criteria include codicological speed. So in other words, when was the first codex written? How was the lag between the actual events and the first codex being written? I look at things like creedal speed. I look at things like witness testimony. How many witnesses there were? Bulkler 1 is
You
asking.
just call him Cody. That's Cody.
Oh, Cody is asking me to list the 13 categories. I feel like after kind of a long day and kind of a long debate, I'm not going to do that, but I would encourage you to check out the argument itself. Kurt has a really great Substack series, so if you want to learn about it that way, you're welcome to do that as well. But I think most of the arguments in CTF don't distill down to argumentum ad populum arguments, but it's a reasonable concern. It's a concern that I have that's been raised to me, and it's a concern that I face. So, and I've sort of talked through that with people, but I probably won't like recap all the arguments and all the criteria because that wasn't the focus of this discussion, and I don't want to get too off track. And also, I'd want to pull up the PowerPoint so I don't misquote anything. But at least some of the criteria.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry I brought up
Oh, no.
something that wasn't on the debate.
It's okay. I mean, I'm glad you bring it up because I think it's a good
Also,
contribution.
we have a local celebrity, UG. Welcome, UG.
Hello, guys. How are you?
Indeed. That's all I had.
Hey, G, good to see you.
As the largest like religion ever, I would think that it would do better. Like, because there's been a lot of people who have been interested in trying to make sure that it stays, it expands. So that was all I thought
Have
about
you
it.
have you seen the CTF video? I know you saw the video on Daniel's channel, but
No, I'll watch it. We don't like. I'll watch it though. I'll catch up with it. That was the only comment I had. Kurt, that was a good debate. You did both of you did well.
You've got a fantastic channel, Robin.
Thanks so much,
if you ever
Robin.
wanted to talk about this, I'd be totally honored.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm gonna step down and let somebody else come up.
Good to see you, Robin. Thanks for the kind words.
Yeah.
Pi 3.1. was I really talking that fast?
That's rolling.
If nobody's is saying anything at the moment, I have a quick question for Tavo. Thanks for the debate, guys. I thought it was really good. I only caught the end of it, I'm afraid, but I did catch a claim by Tavo that the miracles that are attested to at the sanctuary of Epidaurus, you seem to suggest that they were a single claim. Do you mean that there's one surviving inscription, that there's one author, or that these are just an institution making the claim?
We don't actually know where the authorship. Oh, I'd be okay getting muted again, tacos, if you want. Like I know we already talked about that, but Dave Garr says like mute Tavo. Why don't I let some other people ask questions because I don't want to antagonize them.
No, like I said, the rules of the mega bloodbaths. If you participate in them, you get immunity for the night, unless you make me go back and like delete something because you're not socialized properly, right?
Yeah, let me try and answer the new.
But you don't have that problem, so we don't need to worry about you getting muted tonight. Although
Okay.
I do appreciate people wanting to support the show. You can still support the show with questions or comments. You can poke fun. I mean, obviously, don't go overboard with it, but you can like make fun of them or their arguments or whatnot, right? Obviously, don't go overboard, but like there's some limits as to what I'm going to read about people, right? But and it's very reasonable, right? Like just don't be a horrible person. You're a great person, Dave. I'm just saying like for in general, just don't say horrible things in comments and it'll probably get read, right? Or tips and it'll probably get read. Yeah, exactly. He has diplomatic immunity, Dave Guard. That's it. That's what we need to call it. Diplomatic immunity.
Diplomatic immunity.
Well, if you do have time, Tavo, if you could speak to the claim, whether you were saying that there was one single author, or that you say that this is a single source because it's from an institution rather than it being just one person making this claim.
Yeah, there's 70 claims. We don't really know. We know that they're written in stone. We know that they probably served a purpose of advertising. I would distill that down to one author. We don't. It was probably somebody in association with the temple, but.
Oh,
Yeah,
so you would put the whole claims to be made, by a single person for the purposes of advertising the temple services.
Yeah, or like a single source.
So would the source be a person, or is the source the institution? I think that matters significantly in terms of what you're claiming.
When I weigh that source of that the miracles claims from other like ancient claims, I kind of feel like I have to count that as one source, right? Like just like if there's I count it as one source, but I mean,
what would be the basis for counting it as a singular source? Because there are people named in it, different people who are named, different individuals from different cities.
Well, let me ask you this question. The New Testament has Jesus healing a bunch of individuals. Do each of those individuals who receive the healing count as a different source? I would argue no, because you count the actual, work that account is in.
Yes, but I think you would have difficulty then, because you might have to then say that the entire Bible or the New Testament was a singular source because it's written by, or at least approved by, an institution, in the same way that these stelae would have been approved by the temple. It's an argument that I think is probably cuts both ways for you.
So I would disagree that the Bible is created by a single institution. What we have is a very wide diversity of communities that preserve these texts, often ones that are at cross purposes with each other. And so for example, the Qumran scrolls, right? The Dead Sea Scrolls, that's preserved by the Essene community, right? However, the Torah that we actually read from was the one preserved by the rabbinic community and the Pharisaical community, right? And so what we have is we have not a single institution that is has control over this text. Does that make sense?
Well, I think the Gospels are a product of an institution by the time that they were written. Christianity was already an organized religious movement, and they were preserving their own traditions. They were editing material, transmitting stories. So, if an institutional compilation disqualifies the Asclepian accounts for multiple attestations, then why doesn't the same principle apply to the Christian miracle tradition?
Again, I see the criticism. I think it's valid. I maybe I should refine that, but I mean, I think we don't know how much. It's possible that there were different authors writing down different things on the stelae at different times. I just don't think there. I think that's very conjectural.
Well, it would seem that the scholarship would agree with the idea that even private inscriptions were being made that were not just by the temple themselves. People were making their own private inscriptions. You can look at that in different articles. One of them is the healing by Asclepius in Epidaurus. Another one's the didactic nature of the Epicurean Lamata by Dillon. These people say that pilgrims were making their own inscriptions, and it wasn't just the institution. I don't know about the archaeology in terms of the timing of when these inscriptions were made, but I would suspect that they were over a long period.
From my knowledge, there's no scholarship that suggests that these inscriptions came from different authors. But I'll look more into it. I mean, and I don't want to like do too much of a back and forth. I think that there's, again, I want to defer to other people so other people can chat. But my understanding is the stelae are one source. We don't know who wrote them. We don't, we know that they're inscriptions in stone. We don't know that there are different authors. Most people think that the institutional people affiliated with the Temple of Asclepius during a certain epoch wrote down all those accounts. We don't know if, but there's no dates on them. There's, we have names and we have some details, but we don't know when those happened. And we also know that the only place that they show up is on the temple itself. Like, so if somebody wrote down a tablet and carried it elsewhere, I think that might be a little more convincing to me. But I think if it's just, right in front of the temple, there were all these stones that had inscriptions on them. That seems to me like they probably came from the temple. Most people even scholars have explicitly said this is propaganda that was on the temple to get it was essentially serve the purpose of advertising. So I don't think it's hard for me to stretch that into multiple witnesses attesting to that.
Sure. I think probably the strongest historical position that you could get to would be that the surviving inscriptions constitute, one surviving institutional corpus, but that corpus preserves many distinct miracle claims that have been attributed to many different people. I think that would.
And we're not saying these aren't multiple different miracle claims. We're saying that they are attested by one source, whether that source is an individual or the temple itself or the temple staff. We don't really know, and anything beyond that is really conjecture. But maybe there's some scholarship that suggests otherwise. But to my knowledge, these inscriptions show up only on these stones, only found in one place, only found in the temple. They serve a propaganda purpose. They were probably written by the temple staff themselves and not by the people who were healed. That's my understanding of the current scholarly state of the literature on that subject.
I've read different scholarship, but fine. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying.
Nice to meet you and good to see you here. Thank you for.
Yeah, you too, David. Thanks. Nice to see you as well, Kurt. Always good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you, UG. It's always fun to see you.
All right, so I just put another link in chat for anybody that would like to join the panel. If you have questions for our debaters, comments, you'd like to support the show, you can do that through Ko-Fi, Cash App, PayPal, or Streamlabs. You can do that in the description. It's also posted in chat regularly. In addition to that, tonight's topic of the debate was, I think it's specifically, does a Christian God exist? Yes. So does the Christian God exist? Specifically. So if anybody in the panel would like to discuss that with our panelists or anything that was discussed during the debate tonight, that would be a good topic to focus on. Faith from Facts, I'm sure you'd you disagree with some of Kurt's stuff.
Yeah. Well, also probably some of Tavo's stuff if I get really into the details. But I agree with Tavo more than Kurt. But there was one thing that I was thinking, and this kind of actually follows the same kind of line of argument that Tavo used during the debate. But basically, what happens is that it's the if God has everything foregrounded, all knowledge foregrounded, then he can't pay attention to anything. And so, what I know is that humans can hold about 7 pieces of information in their head at a time. And let's say that I'm looking through a telescope at Jupiter, and so one of those 7 things is, what is the position of Jupiter? And then somebody asks me a question about, hey, what are your plans for tomorrow night? Right? I can hold that piece of information in my mind and the piece of information about what my plans are for tomorrow night in my head at the same time, because it's still just 2 out of the 7 slots we have for information. And so and then I can respond and answer the question about what I'm doing tomorrow night, right? And so it seems to me that while there's certainly a biological limit on the things that my brain can hold, there's no limit on the thing that a mind can hold. Does that make sense?
Kurt, you there?
It makes sense.
Yeah, so
to my knowledge,
if that's to me, I'm happy to address it. Is it to me?
Yeah. So basically, my point is that I can hold more than one piece of information in my head while I know, in this immediate sense, more than one piece of information. So why can't, and that's a limit of my brain, but I don't understand why a mind couldn't have an unlimited number.
This is a response, it sounds like, to your argument about the physical limits of God's mind or something.
So again, I'm not talking about anything about the physical facts of it. I'm talking about the linguistic facts, right? Mm-hmm. So, and of course, I have other problems with divine knowledge, but I didn't bring those up tonight. So I'm not talking about divine knowledge. I'm talking about divine attention. And I would dispute your position that you can both pay attention to Jupiter and pay attention to what you're doing Saturday night at exactly the same time. If you are paying attention to what you'll do on Saturday night, you are at least partially backgrounding your attention to Jupiter. And then you can resume that attention to Jupiter after you address what you're doing Saturday night, but you will never be paying full attention to both at the same time.
So I don't really think that's true, because you can hold 7 things in your mind at a time. So, for example, an unfamiliar phone number, 777-63769, right? It's a completely random numbers, and you can hold about 7 of them in your mind at a time.
That's not 7 different things. That's a single string of numbers.
Right. You can chunk it into a single string of numbers, but until you chunk it, it is 7 different numbers.
As a fact check, that claim that you can only think about 7 things at a time has been largely debunked.
Okay.
So it's not like people actually say, yeah, you can only hold 7 things in your brain. That's
in the moment. Okay. In the moment you're attending to something, you're usually attending to only one thing.
Mm-hmm. If you're attending to something, you can only attend to one thing.
Like imagine an outfielder who's catching a fly ball. Mm-hmm. Yes, he has background information about the wind. He has background information about the sun. He has background information about the field that he's on and about who is hitting the ball. But those are all backgrounded while he is attending to the ball.
No, what I'd say is that those pieces of information are integrated into how he is attending to the ball. So has all for example, wind direction, right?
Any one of those facts, he will lose the ball.
I'm not quite sure what you mean there. Sorry.
If his attention veers away from the ball to any other fact, he almost certainly will not catch it.
Right, but the wind direction, which he knows, is playing into how he is catching the ball. Does that make sense?
Are you familiar with Vorhandenheit and Zuhandenheit?
No, I'm not.
So he has specific focused attention on the ball. That's what he's attending to. Then he has background available information about those other factors that he may be incorporating in his attention, but they are not the focus of his attention.
Yeah. So would you be able to say he knows what the wind direction is?
That's I'm talking about attention. I'm not talking about knowledge. So if you want to get into divine knowledge, that's a totally different.
So the claim I feel like you're probably going after here is omniscience, right? That God knows all things.
No.
Okay.
Again, if I'd been going after omniscience, I would have gone after that. I'm talking about partability and impassibility here. And I'm talking about attention necessitating partability and passibility.
So basically, that God has to pay attention to something. God has to split to split from the active knowledge of the thing that he's working with and the passive knowledge of everything else.
I'm not even talking about God specifically. I'm talking about what the word attention means. Right? If we are going to bleach the word attention from having any meaning when we apply it to God, then we can't say that God pays attention. And that's the move the philosophers do, right? That's literally how Thomistic metaphysics works, is that God literally cannot pay attention. He can't respond to prayer because he's impartial.
Well, I think that can't pay attention in the sense that you're meaning here and can't respond would be two totally different things, but that's beside the point. I would think that any Christian would be able to say that he is able to pay attention to me and he is able to pay attention to my brother at the same time. And so the sense of divine attention then can indeed have two or more aspects, right?
I mean, yes, to the degree that you can think of an elephant playing with a basketball, you can certainly have more than one object within an attention focus of an action. That's
okay. So if you can have more than one object in the attention focus of an action,
that's
what is the limit on the attention focus of an action?
So that's partable, right? The attention is composed of parts.
Okay.
So again, that removes the simplicity.
I don't hold the divine simplicity.
Most Christians do. And again, if you just believe in the God of devotion and the God of the scriptures, that's fine. But that's not the Christian God that is put forward in the theologies, right?
Right. So I think that there's been several different approaches towards the God of philosophy. So, for example, in Indian philosophy, you have this idea of Om, which is very similar in many ways, but also very different from this kind of God of philosophers. I think one can think that they're both pointing at the same thing without saying that every aspect of it has to be the same.
Well, the Brahman of Advaita Vedanta, which is just one branch of Hindu thought, clearly doesn't pay attention, right? All experience is an illusion that is taking place within the mind of the Brahman, but the Brahman does not attend to it.
Again, I have thoughts on that. Yeah.
Again, Plato's the good doesn't attend to anything. Aristotle's unmoved mover doesn't attend to anything. And the Epicurean gods don't attend to anything. So all of those God concepts don't have the problem of attention that the Christian God does. Now, if your solution to it is to make the Christian God not the philosopher's God, I mean, that's perfectly legit. But the vast majority of Protestant theologians, Catholic theologians, and Orthodox theologians do believe in the philosopher's God combined with the Hebrew Scripture.
I just don't see how having two objects in your attention, an elephant playing with a basketball, okay, I don't see the upper limit of that number being intrinsic. And if you want to say that parts it out, like, I mean,
there's still bits of information, which means it's partable, right?
So I'm like, even if I put on my bit more traditional theist hat, right, I'm skeptical that that sort of thing would break divine partibility, if that makes sense, or divine simplicity. Because
Why?
you can encode the entire universe as a string of ones and zeros.
Those are parts. Ones and zeros are parts.
Right. And what happens is that God created all of those parts, you know, at least on the divine perspective.
God is aware of parts, then God is in parts.
So if God creates a thing with parts, he has parts. And I just don't feel like that follows even on some of those stronger conceptions of divine simplicity.
Again, I don't make the system. I just grew up with it and I tried to make sense of it.
Right.
I don't think that the system makes any sense. I think it's a direct contradiction in terms. But again, what you're trying to do is to do a form of semantic bleaching. And
no. I'm not trying to do any form of semantic bleaching.
The divine
here
would not have any ability to attend to a single fact if he attends to all facts at all times.
That does not follow. Okay, that God knows and has awareness of all facts. So, like you said, an object of attention can have more than one object.
Okay, then
if it can have more than one object, then why there is in the entire universe throughout all of history a finite number of objects, right? And so I don't see
that's the case.
Okay, so I don't see the upper limit.
I don't think you can demonstrate there's a finite number of objects.
That would require God not to see everything at once. Does that make sense? That there's not the upper limit.
I'm not willing to grant.
Even if they say there's
I'm not willing to grant in reality the thing you're
objects
saying
that we can say is in the same.
I'm not willing to grant in reality the thing that you're saying, but for the purpose of argument, that's fine. Let's go ahead and grant it. Let's grant that it's all finite and that there's like an infinite God and so on and so forth. Let's grant all of that. Okay. In a moment in time, there will be individuals who are Christians, who are German, who are watching a World Cup game between Germany and Switzerland, and they are praying to God that the German team will win. And there will be another subset of Christians who are from Switzerland who are watching the same game and they are praying to God that the Swiss team will win. Does God ignore their prayers? Does he act on all their prayers, or does he only act on some of them?
I think that so the first thing would be that he would have all of these things in his attention at the same time. So that's not a problem. Okay. So then we have some number of prayers that he has at that time. Okay. So can he react to all of them? Well,
no, I'm not asking about what he can
absolutely.
Do. I'm not asking about can. I'm asking you what he does.
So what I would take it now, there'd be simultaneity to this in a way that I personally cannot. But if you send me 3 different letters, I might have 3 different answers.
No. There's one event taking place. There's a game between Germany and Switzerland in the World Cup. One event.
Right.
Okay. During that event, as it is taking place, God is receiving prayers from Christians on both sides, asking for opposite outcomes.
Right.
Does God pay attention to all of them and act on all of them? Does he pay attention to only some of them and act on those? Or does he ignore all of them? Those seem to be the only 3 options.
So I would say he pays attention to all of them and acts on them, all of them. He might not act on all of them in the same way, but that's not the same thing as not acting on all of them.
So what does his action consist of?
Okay, so I mean, you could just have a basic binary, yes or no. It might very well be that he says yes to some, no to others.
So the outcome of the match is determined by the God, not by the players.
I mean, you can say that about everything in one sense and then not in another. So one example of this sort of thing would be in the story of Joseph, right? What happens is his brothers throw him in a pit and sell him into slavery. And what Joseph says about it is, you meant that for evil, but God meant that for good.
Okay.
So I think there's a both and there.
Is determined by the God and not by the players. Is that correct?
I think that you can have meaningful senses of both because, like, for example,
here we go.
Joseph's brothers threw him in a pit and sold him into slavery. They meant that for good. They were doing this thing, right? God doesn't do evil things. But in that, God also had he means this for good, right?
Okay. Do you see that this is a mundane event that takes place all the time, right? So
yes, I see that.
So in these events, when this is taking place, your position is that God is attending to in each case every prayer and is acting in each case on every prayer, such that the outcome of the game is determined by God, which means he is answering yes to one side and answering no to the other side. Is that your position?
So I was just using the okay. You're basically using the yes no binary for that. Sorry, it could be that he's replying no to all of them and letting things play out.
Win and they actually no. There's a third outcome. I suppose it could be a draw, right? So it's possible that God says no to both sides and it's a draw.
Right. So here's the thing, though. He could also say no to both sides and let everything play out. That's another way that he could.
You already moved that away from the possibility, right? You said God is the determiner of the outcome.
No, I said that there's two ways that you could think about it, right?
So if you're
that there's an intention that man has, there's this intention that God has, and maybe God just wants to watch a good game of football.
So is it your position that the players do determine the outcome in all cases, that they only determine it in some cases and God does in other cases, or that God never determines the outcome?
So I would say, yeah, sure. Maybe God says, you know what? I really want the Spurs to win this football game. And so the Spurs win the football game. Huh?
Oh, you're talking about the Tottenham Hotspurs?
I have no, I reached for a sports team name and came out with Spurs. I'm sorry.
Okay. In America, they play basketball.
Right. So he wants the Spurs to win the game. Okay. And so he says, okay, I want to use my divine power to win the game for them. Sometimes he might be like, yeah, I'll just let it play out. I'm not going to interfere. Let them.
You understand free will that of necessity means that he foregrounds actions related to events in some cases and backgrounds it in other cases. Like you've essentially established that my position is correct.
No, my answers have.
You've said in some cases he takes action and in some he doesn't.
Right. In some cases he takes action, in some cases he doesn't. But that's still part
and acts, and in other cases he backgrounds and ignores.
So no. So what we're talking about here is that he still say the prayer, right? Because there's people who are praying for the Spurs to win. There are people praying for the Spurs to lose. Sometimes he answers them yes. Sometimes he answers them no. Sometimes he just lets them play out. Right. But he's still answering everything.
About attention. That's exactly what I'm saying. You are describing the God of Christian devotion, the God who attends, who takes action in time. Right. That's exactly what I'm talking about. But you understand that is not.
So what you're saying is that it is impossible for God to take action in the world without foregrounding some information and not foregrounding others?
I am saying that the concept of taking action in the world is a concept that derives from the concept of attention, right? We don't say a tree takes action, even if a tree is involved in an event, because the tree doesn't have a mind.
Okay. I do not see how being able to pay attention to everything makes it follow that God does nothing.
Did you disconnect?
No, I'm still here. I'm just waiting for Kurt to respond.
Oh, I mean Kurt.
Well, I was already responding to you, and you didn't answer my position, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so give me the question straight then.
Again, taking action requires attention because, as far as we know, only things that can attend can act.
And we've stated in this that God can indeed pay attention to everything, so I don't see why he can't act on everything.
Okay, so, because you just proved that he doesn't.
So when we say act,
that sometimes he lets the players win, and sometimes he intervenes. You just said that. That's you.
Yeah. So intervening or not, choosing to intervene or not intervene, those are both actions that one can take. One can say that you see a billiard ball being hit. You can choose to intervene, stop the ball, or you can choose to not intervene, let the ball go hit the other billiards, right? Both of those are a choice in an action. So, yeah.
But in either case, if there's an actual intervention that's happening in the real world, that intervention will require an interaction with physical particles, which requires attention to which physical particles to manipulate.
So, because it requires attention to physical particles, it would also require attention to particles not to manipulate. So I don't see the point.
Foreground some and background others. That's exactly what I've been saying all night.
He has to foreground some and background others because he is choosing to act on some and not act on others. No, so let's go back to the elephant playing with the basketball scene, right? If that's in my attention, I can act on the basketball without acting on the elephant, and it still be in my attention because there can be more than one object in my attention.
I'm sorry, I'm really having trouble seeing what point you're making there. Okay. Obviously, you're attending to a greater degree to one thing if you're manipulating that thing, and you're backgrounding to some degree the things you're not manipulating, right? If I'm playing tic-tac-toe, I have an awareness field, but when I'm making my mark, I'm attending to a specific spot on that awareness field that I want to act in.
Right. So basically, you're saying that attention can have degrees, which, let me think here. So can God pay more attention to one thing than another thing?
I'm going to go with the fact, you could be a Marcionite. And if you were a Marcionite, you would have some repairs of this. But if you're a Christian, you hold to the Hebrew scriptures being a description of the God Yahweh.
Right.
And the God Yahweh picks the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as his specific emissaries on the planet Earth. That is fundamentally attention and choice and action.
Right. So what? Let me see if I can kind of make your argument back to you real quick to make sure that I'm understanding your argument. Okay. What happens is that God is, impassible. He can't be split up into different parts, right? And so when we have God paying attention to the universe, what happens is that if he chooses, say, Israel to be his people and, I don't know, someone else to not be his people, well, that act of choosing means that he's paying attention to one thing in a way and not paying attention to a different thing in a way. And what happens is that breaks divine simplicity. Is that your argument?
It breaks divine simplicity and divine impassibility, right? God has to pick a side. Specifically, he's picking a side in picking the Israelites over the other peoples who exist on earth at that time, which is the vast majority of the people who exist on earth at that time. And to the degree that they have any knowledge of the God and they're making prayers to a sort of unnamed deity, he's ignoring all of their prayers and only paying attention
Well, no. So there's one thing that I'll note there is that there is a difference between ignoring and responding with no. Right? If I receive a letter from you and just throw it in the trash, I am ignoring you. But if you send me a letter and I write a response, any sort of response, then I'm no longer ignoring you.
It's like we haven't had this conversation yet, and you're just coming at it fresh. You remember that sometimes, in your view, on your position, God sometimes ignores the possibility of taking action and lets the players win the game, right?
So, yeah,
I
wouldn't say. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, I have a request after you guys get done with this topic, but I want to let it come to its own natural conclusion. But I thought we could talk about the, your article about, the purposefulness of the universe. I thought was interesting, Dr. Kurt.
I think that we're kind of circling a little bit here. So why don't we talk about that instead?
I don't want to distract you guys. I think that this is, I don't like.
No, I think this is a fascinating debate, and like I enjoy trying to think through these issues and communicate them clearly. I'm not the best at it, but that's what I do try to do. But like I feel like we've gone back to kind of like the same thing like 3 or 4 times at this point.
Yeah,
I'm not sure that we're having any movement on it.
And I'm not debating, but I just have some questions on it. Like I want to steelman your argument, but it seems to be that your argument, Dr. Kurt, in the article that you put up was, we are in an epistemic position where we cannot know if the universe is purposeful or if it isn't. And in regards to the fine-tuning argument, you say that there's too many variables there that we can't understand, like constrainment. You go through a bunch of other things and we're just in the universe. We're not in a position where we can analyze the persuasiveness of the fine-tuning argument, essentially.
Yeah, I probably would phrase it much more strongly than you're phrasing it. So,
I want to steelman you, so go ahead. And mostly, I'm a little debated out, but I have questions. I thought it was a really interesting article. Go ahead.
So,
how would you rephrase it?
I mean, there's three articles I think so far on the purposefulness, and the one that mainly discusses. Like
the mathematical one was really interesting, and we could talk about that a little bit more. But
the Wigner one is like the one that was actually. I thought the Wigner one was the most compelling argument you've put up yet.
Oh, okay.
So I thought that one was interesting. But Wigner
did it, so it's not really a compliment for me. But go ahead.
But the fine tuning for me is just like it's a non-starter. You're always going to have contingencies. There's always going to be some sort of contingency. We simply don't know the base rate. We don't know the statistical facts, and we don't know the geometry at the base to see whether it would require regularity or doesn't. And I just don't think that any like firm commitment to any position makes sense, because as I mentioned in the article, like there's different ways to read parsimony here, whether you're talking about parsimony of principles or parsimony of like physical facts. And so I just I think you have an N=1 case, and when you have an N=1 case, you can't draw statistical conclusions until you get a second case.
Do you believe that the universe is a brute fact?
Well, I've said this many times on the stream. Of Agrippa's trilemma, I think each is about equally likely. So it's possible the universe is necessary. It's possible the universe is a brute fact. It's possible the universe is a product of an infinite regressive causes. I don't have an ability to adjudicate between the three. And, each one seems roughly as likely to me and has about as much implication for me. In other words, for me, it doesn't really matter which one is the case in terms of how I interact with whatever the actual case is.
Do you think there's, and I'm asking kind of, and I'm not asking to like draw out what you're saying, and you keep coming back to basically essentially an argument that I don't know. But do you think, like I said, I'm about 55% certain that that there's God. That's pretty. It's actually pretty close to 50% probably right now. But do you
I
think
moved you down 5%? I feel like that's a win.
Oh, I don't know that's related to anything in this conversation specifically.
It's happening right after our debate. I'm going to take credit for it anyway.
You know what, Kurt? You deserve the credit, so I'll let you do that. No, but I mean, do you
You're like a chess opponent who lets the opponent checkmate him before they resign?
That's fine. Yes, exactly. Yeah. My brother used to do that to me all the time. He was a good brother also. No, do you think that there's like what is your degree of confidence like in terms of like your preference, or maybe your 55%? You said, this is the thing gets to 55%. Is it a multiverse?
No,
like I said, there's a multiverse?
In the article, I simply do not know, and I don't have the mathematical skills that like a philosophical or physicalist cosmologist would have to like try to get an assessment of it. But I do know that the people who do have the math skills are not uniformly on one camp or the other. So I just think that's exactly the kind of thing one should hold judgment in abeyance and be a quietist on.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I'm kind of asking, like, is there anything that gets to close to 55% in your mind for preferences? It's okay if there isn't. And then in terms of the, I mean, well, I would argue
I'm talking about, I'm just talking about like the structure of the universe there. I'm not talking about the existence or lack thereof of a theist God. Like I'm far less uncertain about the common conceptions of a theist God, the Jewish God, the Muslim God, the Christian God. Those I'm quite confident don't exist.
Yeah. I mean, I just to dovetail off something you said earlier, I don't think any mathematician has the skill to answer those questions right now. I don't think there's a mathematician alive who would, the mathematicians and theoretical physicists who would posit and answer that question would say, we're so dumb about this stuff that we don't even know the questions to ask. We couldn't even refine an educated question to ask, much less posit what an answer is.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, I think I mentioned that in the paper. Like the history of science is so full of reversals that to like say confidently anything about what will be discovered in the future at the moment just seems like nonsense. And if there's no uniformity of belief right now, there's not even expert consensus to appeal to, then just quietism seems like far more sensible to me.
Yeah. What about oh, I lost it. I think I was going to ask something else about the argument. I mean, it's a good article. People should check it out. People should read it.
Yeah, and the one fact that I'm 100% confident of is the only people who would have an argument about fine tuning are things that live in a regular universe that has, at least at the local scale, enough predictability that they could generate like a mechanism for making predictions that had enough accuracy to allow like energy flow to persist for hundreds of millions of years.
How so?
Because otherwise you wouldn't have any discussion of fine tuning. Like in a universe of just rocks and hydrogen, there wouldn't be any discussion of fine tuning.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, do you think there's an event horizon for scientific achievement? Like, in other words, do you think we'll ever have an answer to the question?
Again, the history of science tells me that confident predictions about what the future of science will find are wrong. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I find the literature interesting that we're reaching at least the horizon of the event horizon of scientific achievement. Because as you probe earlier and earlier moments closer and closer to the Big Bang, the energy that you need to probe that structure of matter as you converge down to like the Planck scale becomes essentially infinite.
Yeah. I mean, again, the concept of approximation and the asymptote and all of this stuff does suggest that there will be diminishing returns. But that was widely believed about physics in 1890 and was wrong. So I just would hold to, I don't know what ingenious people will figure out over the next 150 years with the new technologies that will be available to them. And I'm not going to like foreclose on them discovering something that is very germane and gives us evidence that we could use to answer this sort of question. I just don't think we have it right now.
What's the trajectory of your writing? Like you've written a lot of articles about me. You're very prolific in your Substack. You seem to have a very small devoted audience on your Substack. Are you trying to write a book at some point? Or are you trying to get a little more?
Oh, I've written a bunch of books that just nobody's interested in publishing them.
Yeah, well, I mean, same here. Yeah.
So no, my main interests are reconstruction of a full worldview that's like passes for one that makes sense of how to reform the system, right? Like the thing you learn quickly when reading Gibbon is that the characteristic of the great emperors was that they instituted reforms, because all human systems left to their own devices start to fall apart, right? So obviously every system that exists needs reforms. And what you need to do is find a way to like institutionalize the way to do reform properly. And I think like William James hints at this pretty effectively. But you need a bigger structure for it. And you need to do so by decentering the idea that humans are apart or separate from nature.
This is like your Fabian perspective, right?
Yeah, that's like
your sort of Fabian neo-Epicureanism.
Most damaging problem that we face right now is the idea that somehow humans exist separate from the structures that exist that are not human. And so that's like my whole position is really based around that. And so unfortunately, theism is one of the big props that holds up the scala naturae, so to speak, right?
You mean theism is worsening the impression that humans are separate from nature?
Oh, yes. I think theism in its, again, I'm not talking about necessarily what you believe, but theism gives the devotional believer the idea that there is a savior, that there are no problems that can be created by human beings on earth that the God won't intervene to fix. This is precisely the point of divine attention, right? I mean, you can hear people who are committed Christians talking about how they don't worry about climate change because they know that God will not allow anything that he doesn't want to have happen on earth.
Yeah, but I mean, there are many people who are ignoring the problems of climate change. I don't know that that's the standard Christian.
But I would venture to say that there's probably not a single person who is ignoring the problem of climate change who doesn't believe in some form of scala naturae.
There's not a single person who doesn't believe in
In other words, if you accept climate change, you're accepting that the human species is embodied within the ecology and that we both take from and give to the ecology, right?
I mean, look, I think this is a major failing of Christianity, and people ask why I don't identify as a Christian, and this is frequently one of the reasons that I provide, but I don't think it's necessarily like a scripturally novel way to think. We've poisoned the earth. The earth is a gift, right? God created the earth and saw that it was good, and we've poisoned the earth with everything that we've done.
There's a way to read the Dominion passages optimistically, and there's a way to read them pessimistically. But I would say that the general gist of theism, qua theism, is that God specially values humans over other beings, and that God will protect humans.
Again, I'm in a circle of people who don't believe that, who vigorously don't believe it.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, I'm look to the degree that people who are like liberationist and like think that theism applies to all like sentient organisms, they're going to be natural allies of mine in the sense that like they're going to promote like rewilding and promote like restructuring of ecosystems and that sort of thing, and preservation of indigenous lifeways. But again, like the biggest enemy of indigenous lifeways is theism.
You don't think it's capitalism?
Capitalism and theism are closely linked.
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, I think
Why do you
I think
think
traditional
billionaires are funding like apologetics industries and like why do you think the like Russian government is funding all these like orthodox movements in the Western world?
I don't know, but I think the biggest polluters of the world are multinational corporations.
Yeah, and they're almost all run by Christians.
Well, I would argue that a Christian ethic would be against usury, would be against profit motivation, and would therefore mitigate the degree to which capitalists have over expropriated every square inch of the earth to squeeze profit out of it at the expense of the biodiversity and the ecosystem.
Look, to the degree that like you can find within the text of the scriptures some small number of verses that support that view, like, and again, to the degree that there are people who choose to highlight and foreground those and pay attention to them, I think that that's fine, and they may very well be natural allies. But I think it's far better to just say we are an organism. We're an organism on a planet that has just woken up to the fact that we're an organism on the planet. And up until now, up until the moment that we've started figuring this out, we've made horrible mistakes that we can only try to fix to the degree that we can try to fix them by being aware of them. And there is no adult supervision coming to help. But theism promotes the idea there's adult supervision coming to help.
I mean, I'll say yes to that, but I don't think that's definitionally true. I don't think it's inherently or intrinsically true. In other words, I think we're both in agreement that a theist could say, yes, we are an organism on the earth. Yes, we're a little bit elevated because we have the ability to poison every other ecosystem.
See, there you go. You're still a little bit scholar-natural.
I don't think so. I'm just saying that we have the ability to poison other ecosystems.
That's absolutely true, but it's not because of anything that we should be proud of.
I agree with you there. I agree. I think it's horrific that we poison other ecosystems. We should not be proud of it. We are hierarchically in a position of greater power over other ecosystems.
Yeah,
I mean, look, I think in general people are abandoning environmentalism in the droves. I don't see any party like being big environmentalists.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I don't think even the environmental parties are particularly environmentalist, to be flatly honest.
I would agree with that too. Yeah. And I was a huge environmentalist. Basically, when I was, active in the 80s and 90s, about 80% of the adult population identified as environmentalists or pro-environmentalism. Now that percentage is down to about 20 or 30%. So that's a really precipitous drop. I don't know that that's the fault of theism. I mean, theism during the same time frame has gone way, way down.
I certainly agree that there are all sorts of bad ideas, and I, to the degree that there are secular organizations that are also full of bad ideas, I've gone up against them as well.
Yeah. People in the chat, what do you think? Are we here for a purpose? Are we elevated above organisms? Are we the same as other organisms?
I don't think it's a fair dichotomy to say, are we here for a purpose? I think it's a much more important question to say, are we here for a purpose we make ourselves or a purpose something else made for us?
How about, are we here for a purpose that is inherently beyond our ability to perceive?
Yeah, I would just disagree with that. And again, to me, like the idea that there's a purpose or that our purpose can come from some understanding of the physical facts rather than our natural desire to have a harmonious life and have a harmonious like propagation of our species is itself like highly confused.
This is more what I was expecting to encounter in the debate. I wasn't really expecting your argument. I didn't, just very honestly, I didn't find it to be as interesting as some of the other arguments that you've made, but I was expecting to like argue against like Neo-Epicureanism is a pathway to human flourishing and stuff like that.
I mean, I got Epicurus in there.
Yeah. Let's see what the new UG has to say.
I was just going to ask Tavo.
Yes, welcome
what's your
back.
position on something like anti-foundationalism, so metaphysical anti-foundationalism?
Is there a specific tenet or a specific?
Actually, guys, I do have to do some parenting, so it's been a great debate. UG, you enjoy. I'm going to bug out, guys. Thanks so much.
Dr. Kurt, I can't thank you enough in so many ways and on so many levels, and I'm really grateful. So thank you for being here.
I also appreciated our conversation, man. I enjoyed it.
All right, bye.
The new G, sorry, what's your question?
I'm just wondering if you'd heard
Have
much
a wonderful one, Kurt. Thank you for dropping by. We all appreciate you. Sorry for the late response there, even though you dropped out. I'm sure you're going to hear it. Thank you, Kurt. Have a wonderful day and appreciate you doing the debate.
And thanks for hosting this tacos also. So which tenet of anti-foundationalism?
Oh, I mean, metaphysical anti-foundationalism is just the rejection of the idea that reality requires some kind of ultimate sort of ontological grounding or a foundation or some kind of, explanatory finality or terminus.
I think mathematics is fundamental, foundational. Max Tegmark writes a lot about this, saying that the true nature of the universe is fundamentally mathematical and that everything else is emergent beyond that. I mean, are you asking if I think that mathematics is discovered or I think the mathematics is pre-existent and we lay on top of it a language for understanding and interpreting it.
I mean, it's more the fact that someone like a theist or an apologist or even many atheists say that contingent things require a grounding. But that to me is an assumed step. Why would we think that contingent things require grounding or existence requires a grounding?
Yeah, that's like sort of the tag argument, right? Presupposition.
No, it would be completely a tag argument would be a transcendental argument for God. So they would say that there is some necessary grounding or necessary intelligibility that pre-exists. Well, they have to presuppose that they can only attribute to God, I suppose. But it's a very sort of flawed argument.
I think the mathematics is fundamental. I think the morphology of the universe, the topography of the event horizon is more fundamental than our emergent experience of three-dimensional space. So I think that our experience is reducible to information. That information does seem to have something like a binary 1 and 0 thing. I'm quoting the research of Leonard Susskind and Gerard de Tooft in that regard.
Yeah, I would just consider all of that just kind of nonsensical, really. It's just conceptual. If you were to divide 1 and 2 separately, it's not, or 1s and 0s separate, it doesn't make any sense to say that that's fundamental. And I don't think you would share that.
Well, it's not the 1s and 0s are fundamental. It's that the event horizon of the universe is fundamental.
I don't know what that even means.
That, our three-dimensional reality can be reduced to 2 dimensions of information. And that 2-dimensional information is depicted on the surface of the universe. This is from the Black Hole Theory Wars, which was a debate between Stephen Hawking and Leonard Susskind. The debate was what happens when something falls into a black hole, right?
Yeah.
And the resolution of that debate was, if you toss something into a black hole, it's not lost from the universe. There's an imprint of that, whatever object is that you threw in, that remains on the event horizon of the black hole, right? Now, that event horizon is a 2-dimensional information matrix. So,
I think Hawking won this argument because
no, he lost.
Well, the Hawking radiation kind of proves that information is kept within black holes in some form and it's not lost completely.
Yeah, so Stephen Hawking's point was not that. Stephen Hawking's point was the opposite of that. He said that if you throw something into that you're getting into Hawking radiation is kind of another step of the analysis. So I'm kind of glossing over that. But basically, the argument by Hawking was, once you toss something into a black hole, it's lost from our universe for all time. right? Now,
I think he was arguing against that, actually.
No, he was he was definitely arguing for that. In other words, the counter position was being argued by Leonard Susskind and Gerard de Tooft, and they believed that that there is a law of conservation of information. In fact, our understanding of the law of conservation of information emerged from this debate. The debate actually they bet each other like a bottle of wine, actually, and Stephen Hawking at the end admitted that he had been defeated and gave the bottle of wine to Leonard Susskind. Leonard Susskind wrote a whole book about this called The Black Hole Theory Wars.
Yeah, well, this is the black hole information paradox. So he did initially argue that information is lost, but
well, regardless of what he's argued, the point is he argued initially that information is lost, right?
But in 2004, he publicly changed his mind.
Oh yeah. No, you're right. But that was the end. That his public mind changing was his public capitulation. I was wrong. The black hole theory and information war has ended, and it is resolved with this understanding. But the whole point of what I was saying is, when you toss something into a black hole, that thing you toss into a black hole is three-dimensional, right? The event horizon of the black hole is the surface of the black hole. So by definition, that's two-dimensional, right? So that means that you can represent two-dimensional.
Well, no, it's a sphere.
What's that?
It's a sphere. The event horizon is a sphere. That's three-dimensional, not two-dimensional.
The surface of the sphere is two-dimensional.
No, it's a three-dimensional object. It has
a sphere. The internal volume of the sphere is three-dimensional.
Yeah, but the surface is also 3 dimensions.
No, the surface is two-dimensional. A surface of any space, any structure is two-dimensional by definition.
No, a sphere cannot be two-dimensional. It's impossible.
The question is if you can unfold it and lay it flat. Sure, you have got to make some orange peel cuts, but you can do that with a sphere.
Yeah, and I don't want to get we're getting way off the point that I was trying to make, but you can actually do that with a sphere. Basically, what you do is you start at the center of where you measure.
And no, hang on, Tabo. Any point on a sphere is the center of the sphere on the surface.
You could no. I know. I'm thinking this is how you map the information on a sphere.
Yeah, I don't know what you'd be drawing. What would you draw if you drew the surface?
All right, let's say. I mean, for purposes of this argument, it's not super important, but for purposes of this argument, let's say that every black hole is a cube. You agree that a cube is a surface, and that surface is two-dimensional, right?
No, I would disagree because a cube is a three-dimensional space. You know, if you're looking at Euclidean geometry, then if you were to separate that out to 2D, then it's not going to work.
You are mathematically mistaken. The surface of a cube is two-dimensional. The internal structure of the cube is three-dimensional.
Well, if you were to take, say, let's look at a cube and name the sides, as a dice.
Real fast, before counting the sides of the cube, if y'all are enjoying this show, please consider supporting with the tip. We got about just over 15 minutes left on this goal. We're at 0 to 5 right now, so if you're loving the show, please consider supporting with a tip. It does make all the difference in the world, allows us to keep doing this. And if you barely like the show, make sure you slam that like button. It pushes out to more people and does help a little bit. Sorry for the interruption there.
All right, let me just sort of skip to the end of the argument because I feel like we're going to get lost in the geometrical clarification. But the end of the argument is this: if you toss something that's three-dimensional into a black hole, and a remnant of it is left in 2 dimensions on the surface of the black hole, then that proves that you can represent its three-dimensional nature using only 2 dimensions, right? And what they concluded, and this is, again, I'm distilling down a very complicated set of arguments, but what they concluded is the universe has the same set of rules, right? So technically, everything that we experience three-dimensionally can be represented by a 2-dimensional surface of the event horizon of the universe. That's the whole point that I'm making. That's the nature of the universe as a hologram. This is now, I won't say it's accepted by every physicist, but it's the consensus opinion. Now we can kind of get on to like our discussion of like, is the surface of a 3-dimensional object 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't see how that answers the question about the need for metaphysical grounding. I also don't see how it gets you to a theistic position, but yeah, fine.
I talk about the theistic implications of that. That's a different question about whether or not it's
that'll be a continuation of it. But I still don't see how that's kind of answered the question. If you can take 3D space and take it into 2D space, and then all of the information would then therefore boil down to ones and zeros. I don't know how that becomes some metaphysical foundation, because all you would then end up with is, say, relatively speaking, everything is made up of these ones and zeros. But
yeah,
why
I would just say that our
is that the
three-dimensional.
terminus of explanation?
Yeah, I'm just saying that our three-dimensional experience is not foundational.
Right.
In other words, what is fundamental is information on the event horizon of the universe, very far from what we actually experience, and yet it defines what we experience.
So experience itself is foundational.
No. The experience is emergent. The event horizon of the universe is foundational.
Yeah, but to have an experience, you have to have like a subject and an object. So the object in this instance would be the 2D shape, and you are the subject that the object is appearing to.
Let me think about that some more. Now that's an interesting idea. Let me think about that some more. Can I ask you this as a hypothetical? Could you imagine a two-dimensional universe with organisms in that universe?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. Can you take a part of that universe and wrap it around a cube?
Not if it was truly two-dimensional, no, because it would lack a certain property. So if you would take the cube, so take a 1 side and a 6 side on a cube, the 1 side has XY properties, like any 2D object would have XY properties, but it also exists in the Z axis, and the 1 differs from the 6 because otherwise they'd be in the same plane. So this is why I say that a 3D object can't be a 2D object, because
but
the six side and the 1 side have different Z axes.
Let's say I take a part of that two-dimensional universe with organisms in it, and I fold it into the shape of a cube. Right? That's certainly something I could theoretically do, right?
Well, you would have a 2D representation of a cube.
No. So that universe itself is two-dimensional. I could take that two-dimensional plane and I could fold it. Now, if you're in that plane, you would not be aware of the folding that occurs, because that folding is in a higher dimension that you don't exist in.
Yeah, I see your point, but if you were to add an x-axis to something that only had the properties of xy, you've now definitionally changed it. So all you're saying is, if 2D space was actually 3D space, then would it be 3D space? Well, yeah, of course. You've added a property to something that didn't exist before and say, well, it's changed. I was like, well, yeah, I agree.
I've folded 2 dimensions with respect to a higher dimension.
No, you've added an x-axis to what was previously an xy only property.
Yeah, I've added a z-axis, I think is what you mean.
Oh, yeah, Z. Sorry,
again, that z-axis only exists in a third dimension. In other words, the two-dimensional thing that I've folded is still just two-dimensional.
But when you say fold, I mean, what you're actually saying is you've made an addition of this z-axis during that process somehow. But all you're doing is adding a property to something and saying, well, this is now changed. I agree.
Yeah, I think the surface of a three-dimensional object is still two-dimensional by definition.
I think by definition it's three-dimensional because it contains the Z. You'd have to remove it to say that it's two-dimensional. But you can, of course, take a cube.
But that Z doesn't exist in the two-dimensional plane. You see, it only exists in regards to a third dimension.
Yes, I agree. But if you take the example of a two-dimensional existence or world, and you say, well, if I add a third dimension, then it's three-dimensional.
No. I'm not adding anything to that universe. I'm
what's this folding thing
that universe. I'm folding it.
Yeah, but the folding. When you say folding, that's doing a lot of the heavy lifting of adding. You're adding.
No. Because if you live in that two-dimensional universe, you still believe that you are in a two-dimensional universe.
Well, you would no longer be in a two-dimensional universe because you've given it the Z.
I'm not in the two-dimensional universe, but the sentient creatures who live in two dimensions are still in it.
Yeah, but you
can look this up online. You can ask the question to Google or ask the question to a mathematician or anybody who knows about geometry. But any surface of a three-dimensional object is definitionally two dimensions.
Yeah, I think we've probably come at an impasse.
Yeah. I mean, it's this is a little bit of a hard question because we're talking about multi-dimensions, but But if you any kind of two-dimensional, like a sheet of paper can be, if you think of it as having zero thickness, then that's still two-dimensional. If you fold it and it doesn't have any thickness, I mean, of course, a sheet of paper does have thickness, then you haven't created a new dimension. It's not like you've created thickness in the sheet of paper. You've just folded a two-dimensional object in three-dimensional space.
Yeah, you have also texture maps is another example of this. So what happens is that, say, in a video game, you have a soldier or a rifle or whatever, and what happens is that the texture that is applied to the model is just a 2D image that is folded by the program into a 3D one, right? And so you have a 2D surface that gets wrapped onto a 3D object.
Yeah, just imagine an infinitesimally thin sheet of paper that's two-dimensional by definition, right? If you fold it, you've not added any thickness to the paper. You're just folding it in regards to a third dimension. Are there any physicists in the chat who want to explain this better than I'm explaining it? Feel free.
Physicists are welcome to call in. We've got the link pinned. I'll post it here again right now for y'all. If any physicists would like to call in, or just other atheist or theist debaters as well.
So you believe, because of the nature of reality, given that it's the way that you describe, that this is, an answer to Agrippa's trilemma of foundationalism?
No, I'm kind of agnostic on Agrippa's trilemma. In other words, I don't know about the foundationalism. I tend to think that the mathematics is foundational and that the information in the universe is foundational.
That's within the trilemma, though. That would be just an arbitrary stopping point.
Yeah, but I might be wrong. I mean, this is me saying this is what I tend to think. This is not like any kind of degree of certainty.
Yeah, I mean, Agrippa's trilemma is basically saying that if you posit any kind of foundation, you're going to come up against the trilemma, which is, it's either going to be an infinite regress, it's going to be circular explanation, or it's going to be arbitrary. So a God explanation is just an arbitrary stopping point. If you say it's eternal, that's just an infinite regress. And obviously circularity, but
yeah, well, I guess
why would you claim any of these things to be the case?
Yeah, and I guess what I'm saying is I tend to lean towards other things being more foundational than our experience. It doesn't explain where those other things came from, if you like that. If that's another way to put it. And so it doesn't.
I was wondering if you were some kind of theist.
Yeah, I mean, I could argue from the standpoint of theism. I mean, my perspective is that I'm around 55% or so certain that there is a God. I think it's a much more certain claim that if any religion is true, then Christianity has the strongest evidence basis of being true. And that's the comparative theological framework argument that I've made. And I've made that separately. But if there's any argument that sort of that comes out of this discussion that tipped me towards theism, it's this. There is no way to erase information from the universe, right? That came out of that theoretical debate between Stephen Hawking and Leonard Susskind. In 2007, we replicated an experimental setting where we proved that as well. It was an experiment with a quantum computer where they actually deleted qubits and they reconstructed the information from the deleted qubits, suggesting that if you have a quantum computer in a closed system, there's essentially no way to delete information. Now, this proved the quantum no eraser theorem, which holds that quantum information can never be erased. So that's part of the law of conservation of information.
Would you not see that as an argument for eternalism in a way? That if information can't be created or destroyed, then that's kind of your answer. It's eternal.
It became an argument that sort of gave me a proclivity towards theism, But the reason why is because it suggests that, look, as an atheist, I believed that that we are infinitesimal beings in a huge, chaotic, entropic universe, and that as time goes on, we're gradually erased from history. For example, after I die, no one's, people will remember me for maybe months, maybe years, but pretty soon everyone's going to forget that I existed, and pretty soon it'll be as though I never existed at all, right? So in 2017, when I started reading Leonard Susskind and Gerard de Tooft's arguments about this stuff, I realized that the universe is a recording medium. In other words, that the information of who I am, according to the universe, is preserved. Now, that can only happen with a degree of constrainment. The event horizon of the universe has to be constrained with certain properties, right? If it's unconstrained, if it's freely moving, the event horizon, then that information can be erased.
So I'm not sure what you mean by the event horizon of the universe, because to me, the understanding of the universe is that the totality of all things, but some event horizon seems to be like a limit that you're positing that is where reality appears to you. I'm not sure.
Do you think that the universe is infinite?
I don't know.
Yeah. If it's not infinite, then it seems reasonable that it would have an event horizon. Mm-hmm. Most physicists,
right? So if it's finite in that way, then if it's limited in that way, what's outside of it?
I don't know. But it would suggest that the event horizon shouldn't be constrained.
But if there is a constraint to the universe, then there must be something outside of that by definition. So what constrains what's outside of it?
I don't know.
Well, it would appear that something must constrain that, and then that itself must also be constrained by something else. So it would perhaps.
Why does that thing outside of it have to be constrained by something else?
Well, if it isn't, then that's infinite.
Well, how about this? The property of event horizons is constrained from what we know of black holes. How about that, right? So if the universe has the same property of black holes, and there's other arguments, but let's assume that the main argument is that our universe has the same properties as a black hole.
But that would be a composition fallacy. I'm sure you know that.
There are other reasons for thinking that our universe has the properties that are analogous to a black hole, but I'm not going into that. But I'm just saying, assume for a reason that our universe is like a black hole. That's a sort of an understanding that comes from physics. Some people have argued that our universe is within a black hole. I think that's sort of now there are arguments for that, but but I'm not a physicist, and I think going too deep into that arguments would not do those arguments justice.
Sure. I mean, all of this says to me these are relative truths about physics per se. It doesn't say anything about existence or metaphysics.
Correct, but I mean, I would argue that my atheist assumption is, and again, this is not like a proof for God in my mind, but my atheist assumption would be that this universe is chaotic, entropic, and eventually we are erased from existence.
Well, when you say erased from existence, you seem to suggest that it's more a case of being forgotten out of conscious memory. Whereas you said earlier that
no, I mean just it becomes so entropic that the information gets totally lost.
But there'll be no point in the timeline where your existence didn't matter to the timeline. You couldn't erase it per se. You couldn't remove it from history. It will always be there. It will always have had an effect on the present.
Let me give you the analogy that Leonard Susskind gives for this. Okay. Let's say I fill my sink up with water, okay? And I'm going to walk over to my sink and I'm going to take a red dye dropper, okay? And I'm going to drop in Morse code and I'm going to send a message to you in the future, right? Now, I take my little red dye dropper, I drop the drops, the dye distributes throughout that sink basin, right? And then I leave and then you come in the next day. The question is, can you read the information, that message that I left? And the answer is the intuitive answer would be no, you can't. That information is gone. It's too chaotic. It's too entropic. It's disappeared. But what Leonard Susskind is arguing, and this is the view of most physicists, is that information is actually still there. Computationally, it becomes nearly impossible to get back out of the system, but it is on some level still there. So that created, at least for me, a bit of a problem for my atheism, right? And the reason was because I don't see any reason why the universe should record information. Now, of course, there are mechanisms for this. These mechanisms are written into quantum reality, and they're written into everything that we know about everything else. But
I do want to say Leonard Susskind's an agnostic, so I'm kind of shocked that that would make you lean towards Christianity.
So, if I could give an analogy, I think for kind of what happened.
I think that you should actually pay more attention to what the actual expert that you're quoting, what their position is, and what they're saying about this stuff, because this is just motivated. I know it's just new UG right now, so I'm going to jump in, but like this is just motivated reasoning.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that Leonard Suskind's conclusions about the philosophical implications of what he's discovered are necessarily like what he follows. I mean, but if you're saying like, shouldn't that dissuade me? Shouldn't that make me skeptical? I would agree. It should make anyone skeptical. If he's looked into this stuff and he doesn't, and he's the one who figured this stuff out, and he still remains agnostic, then I think that's something that should give anyone some pause. It should give anyone some hesitancy. Like I said, this is not a proof, but I will say this: he himself has concluded that we as scientists are just scraping the surface of this information. In other words, we don't even understand what we're discovering, and we don't know what we're looking at, and we certainly don't understand enough to know the significance of it. But from my perspective, it's hard to figure out. And you could say that my argument is an argument from incredulity, but this isn't just my incredulity. This was the standard thinking of all physicists from the 1970s till about the 2000s. In other words, from the 1970s to the 2000s, we thought that a black hole exists like a quantum eraser, and we thought that the universe has the same properties, that once you fall into the universe, you've disappeared from whatever exists outside of the universe, if anything exists outside of the universe at all. And we thought that if you reach the event horizon of the universe somehow, even though that's really impossible, just based on the rules of geometry, but if you ever could reach the event horizon of the universe, it would be as though you disappeared from the universe, right? Moreover, as time goes on, the universe should just be like a cloud of smoke that erases all of our information from existence. So I wouldn't say that anyone should take any of this as definitive proof that there is a God, but for me, it at least dislodged some important groundwork for my personal atheism.
So to you, Tabo, this edge of the universe is the event horizon you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. Yeah, that's fine.
So you think that space has a limit? So if we were to throw a spear in one direction into space, eventually at some